There's a certain kind of exhaustion that doesn't live in the body. It lives in the mind. You're awake, wired, and drowning in thoughts that feel urgent but achieve nothing. Every idea collides with the next until clarity becomes impossible. You open your phone for a 5-minute break and resurface 40 minutes later, overstimulated and strangely hollow. You plan your life down to the minute yet hesitate at every decision. You read, you analyze, you gather so much information that your intelligence begins to paralyze you. That's the hidden cruelty of modern thought. It promises freedom but breeds hesitation. You know exactly what needs to be done, yet the loop of what if and should I grips you tighter than chains. Your mind becomes a battlefield where every possibility fights for control, and victory always belongs to doubt. You can feel it in the micro moments. The pause before sending a message. The second guessing before speaking truth. The compulsive gathering of more data before taking a single step. Overthinking is clever fear dressed as logic. It makes you feel responsible for every possible future while robbing you of the only real weapon you have, the present. You're not lazy. You're overloaded. You live in a world that mistakes motion for progress and thinking for wisdom. But thought can become its own addiction, and the withdrawal symptoms are indecision, anxiety, and self-doubt. This is a modern man's quiet torment. He's alert but ineffective, intelligent but paralyzed. We have mastered the art of mental preparation and forgotten the art of decisive action. Sometimes late at night, you realize how tired your thoughts sound, how repetitive, how shallow, like echoes of other people's voices bouncing through your skull. The mind chatters like market noise, each opinion louder than the last, until your intuition disappears beneath the static. You watch endless videos on productivity, read books on mental mastery, and still feel trapped in your own head. You tell yourself you're planning, but what you're really doing is rehearsing failure over and over until hesitation becomes muscle memory. The real tragedy isn't that we overthink. It's that we mistake that chaos for consciousness. We believe constant analysis means awareness, but awareness isn't noise. Awareness is still water, clear, silent, reflecting reality without distortion. We confuse movement for vision, when real vision demands stillness. Now imagine the complete opposite of that chaos, a man standing calm in a storm, eyes steady, breath slow, a warrior surrounded by arrows, shouting, and death. Yet his gaze doesn't flicker. He moves when it's time to move. He cuts when the opening arrives. No waiting, no flinching, no panic. Just pure, uncluttered execution. The samurai were not immune to fear. They simply trained their minds to remain untouched by it. Their world was chaos incarnate, yet their minds operated like still lakes. Imagine such power, not the loud dominance of emotion, but the silent control of clarity. They didn't eliminate thought. They eliminated attachment to thought. They cultivated minds sharp enough to think and free enough to stop thinking when the moment demanded it. In battle, hesitation meant death, and so they trained to remove it. Every breath, every strike, every step rehearsed until thinking became unnecessary, until thought and movement became one that we live far from the battlefield now. Yet we still die 1,000 small deaths every day, each hesitation a cut, each doubt a blade. The difference is the enemies are invisible: comparison, distraction, and mental noise. We can't escape them with more thinking. What we need is the same discipline forged centuries ago by those silent warriors. They knew the mind was both sword and enemy, and they designed a way to make it an ally again. The samurai had a word for this weaponized clarity, Mushin, the mind that moved before it hesitates. The human mind was never designed for peace. It was designed for protection. Thousands of years ago, its entire purpose was survival: scan for danger, predict threats, plan the next hunt. Thought was a weapon to keep us alive. But now, free from predators and famine, that same ancient mechanism keeps swinging its blade with nothing left to cut. The mind still searches for threats, but since the external ones are gone, it invents internal ones. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if they judge me? The modern man isn't hunted by lions. He's hunted by his own imagination. Overthinking is that primitive radar gone rogue, detecting risks in every direction, analyzing endlessly so it never has to decide. The irony? What once ensured survival now disables it. The mental energy meant for action is burned on rehearsal. The fire of instinct smothered by thought, society calls as intelligence. We praise a man who thinks things through, who analyzes every option until opportunity passes him by. The world tells you to think more, plan harder, be rational at all times. But the samurai understood a truth that modern culture rejects. Too much thought is paralysis disguised as wisdom. They knew that in decisive moments, the intellect must bow to instinct. While the modern man struggles under the weight of too much information, the warrior embraced emptiness as an advantage. He trained not to complicate thought, but to clarify it, to make the mind sharp enough to cut, yet silent enough to move. The contrast is brutal. Our culture confuses analysis with competence. The ancient mind saw clarity as the absence of noise. Overthinking is less about logic and more about fear wearing logic's mask. The mind convinces you it needs one more detail, one more opinion, one more sign before it commits. But underneath that strategy is anxiety whispering, if I can predict everything, nothing can hurt me. This is a lie that's kept men trapped for centuries. We try to control life by simulating it in our heads, running mental gymnastics that leave us exhausted and unmoved. Each hypothetical becomes a false battlefield. Every imagined outcome an opponent we never actually face. We fight ghosts, then wonder why we're tired when no real battle occurred. The mind, meant to be a blade, becomes a maze, a place where thought defends itself from truth. What's worse is how clever it feels. There's even a perverse pride in overthinking. We believe worry proves we care, that control ensures progress, that anxiety equals discipline. But that's like sharpening a sword endlessly and never striking with it. The point of a blade isn't polish, it's precision in motion. The samurai grasped that perfection doesn't live in endless rehearsal. It lives in contact with reality. And that's what overthinking evades reality. The loop becomes self-feeding. Fear demands thought. Thought breeds more options. Options breed confusion. Confusion amplifies fear. A perfect circle of paralysis. Even neuroscience confirms it now. Every time the mind loops on worry, the brain's threat circuits activate, tricking the body into preparing for a danger that doesn't exist. Cortisol surges, heart rate climbs, pupils dilate. You become physically ready to confront a tiger that never appears. It's an invisible war fought entirely in imagination. And here's the cruelest part. The brain rewards it. It gives you a microdose of satisfaction for solving imaginary problems, even though nothing happened. We rewired survival instincts for simulation, and now we confuse rumination with readiness. The ego loves this chaos. It thrives on mental movement because silence threatens it. The strategist inside you wants control, certainty, and guarantees, but life has never offered those. The ego believes more thought means more safety, when in reality, more thought just builds a stronger wall between you and decisive action. The real courage isn't to think everything through, but to trust that your preparation was enough and step forward unarmed by doubt. The ancient masters called it freedom through surrender, and it didn't come from neglecting thought, but from knowing when to drop it. They didn't escape thinking by accident. They trained to silence it at will. The samurai didn't escape thought by accident. They trained to kill hesitation itself. There is a point where the mind becomes silent not by suppression, but by synchronization. Every thought, movement, and intention align so seamlessly that the division between thinker and doer disappears. The samurai called this Mushin no Shin, the mind without mind. In that state, the sword moves before conscious thought can intervene. Decisions arise without hesitation, because hesitation requires an audience, and in Mushin, there is none. The man, the weapon, and the moment fuse into a single expression of clarity. It is not carelessness, it is precision without interference. The origin of Mushin was not found in books or temples. It was born in the immediacy of combat, where delay meant death. Imagine standing in a duel. Two warriors face each other, still as statues, their awareness attuned to every flicker of movement, every shift in balance, every breath. In that instant, words, strategies, and plans vanish. There is no time to think. There is only presence or nothing, and nothing, paradoxically, becomes the ultimate mastery. For the samurai, the mind had to be as clear as polished steel. If doubt, anger, or expectation colored awareness, the strike would falter. So they learned to erase themselves, not through denial of identity, but through total surrender to reality. Mushin is not a void. It is a mirror of consciousness, reflecting everything, clinging to nothing. Modern psychology calls this a flow state, that rare mental condition where time dissolves, self-consciousness falls away, and performance becomes effortless. Athletes describe it when the game slows down and every movement feels automatic. Musicians feel it when melodies seem to play through them rather than from them. Writers know it when sentences appear fully formed, as if dictated by silence itself. Flow isn't magic, it's alignment. It's Mushin translated through modern language, though stripped of its spiritual backbone. The samurai were achieving flow centuries before neuroscience coined the term. But where Western science describes it as peak performance, Zen described it as peerless presence. The difference is subtle yet profound. Performance still aims for reward. Presence dissolves the one who seeks it. The path to this state wasn't meditative escapism. It was forged through unbearable repetition. A swordsman would perform the same movement thousands of times until the body no longer needed permission from a brain to execute it. Form was drilled until it became invisible. That's what Zen meant by discipline, freedom gained through absolute structure. Kata, the formalized patterns of combat, were not mechanical rituals but internal calibrations. With each strike, the samurai rewired the barrier between thought and motion, turning technique into instinct, instinct into expression. The goal was not perfection of movement, but perfection of mind within movement. Consider how that principle translates now. In our world, overthinking fragments action into brittle pieces, anxious starts, mid-course doubts, endless adjustments. We live split between intention and execution, our attention half on the task and half on our image doing it. Mushin cures this fracture. It eliminates the observer within who comments, judges, and hesitates. When you truly act, there's no room for am I doing this right? Because the question evaporates inside commitment. That's why you move faster and cleaner when you stop thinking about form. Because the moment you stop evaluating, the body's intelligence emerges. The truth is, most people aren't fighting distraction. They are fighting self-consciousness. Mushin is the antidote, living without commentary. The samurai didn't stumble into this clarity accidentally. They cultivated it through what Zen monks called zazen, sitting meditation, where awareness learns to witness thought without attachment. Imagine sitting in silence and watching your mind's noise arrive and dissolve without chasing it. That's the training ground. Thought loses authority. Emotion loses weight. You begin realizing that thinking and being are not the same, that you can observe thought like clouds moving across an open sky. In combat, this becomes crucial. When tension rises, the untrained mind tightens around fear, trying to control everything at once. The trained mind relaxes into awareness, allowing the body to react naturally. Mushin wasn't mystical. It was mechanical freedom achieved through spiritual discipline. As one Zen master put it, when the archer becomes one with the bow, the arrow knows its own way. To understand Mushin, imagine carving wood. If the craftsman overthinks each cut, the blade veers or halts. But when he disappears into the rhythm of his hands, each stroke becomes inevitability. That is no mind. Beauty arises not from effort, but from the absence of interruption. The same applies to writing, training, speaking, leading any craft sustained by attention. The world calls it mastery, but the samurai would call it emptiness functioning perfectly. No mind isn't numbness. It is full awareness minus interference. Psychologically, Mushin liberates energy. Overthinking burns resources on constant internal commentary, but when consciousness unifies, when attention stops looping through self-reference, all power flows into action. The reactive noise of the nervous system quiets. Dopamine no longer chases novelty. It anchors to rhythm. The mind becomes an ally again. Instead of resisting life, it rides it. The warrior's weapon becomes an extension of his will, and his will becomes as fluid as water. That's why Mushin feels serene even in aggression, calm even in motion. It isn't emotional suppression. It's transcendence of self-chatter. The man in Mushin doesn't need the world to be predictable. He needs only to be present within it. His clarity is his armor. His awareness is his weapon. When there is no barrier between perception and motion, there is nothing left to fear. You cannot overthink when you become the thoughtless act itself. And though the ancient duels have long ended, the arena of hesitation remains within every man. The battle is no longer fought with swords, but with seconds of indecision. The trick, the ancient, immortal trick, is not to silence the mind by force, but to let it empty through repetition, awareness, and surrender. Freedom begins not with having the answers, but with ceasing to ask unnecessary questions. Mushin wasn't theory, it was battle-tested. And it begins where hesitation dies. In the body, the samurai didn't wait for stillness to arrive, they summoned it through discipline. Mushin wasn't a gift of enlightenment, it was a consequence of precise ritual. The mind is wild by nature, it only bows to rhythm. The warriors of old understood this, so they built their training around forms that stripped away hesitation and ego until presence became their natural state. If Mushin is a blade, discipline is the whetstone. In the modern world, we no longer carry swords, but the inner battle is the same, how to act without being possessed by thought. What follows are 3 ancient inspired disciplines for the man who wants to train his mind to obey him again. Each practice is simple, but simplicity is deceptive. It's the hardest mastery of all because there's nothing to hide behind. Observe. Act. Release the still blade. Every morning begins with silence, not scrolling. 10 minutes seated upright, still as stone, spine straight, gaze soft. This is not comfort meditation or empty ritual. It's confrontation. You're not here to feel calm. You're here to see what hunts you from within. Thought races like wind through tall grass. Plans, regrets, distractions, small bursts of ego pretending to be purpose. Let them all pass. Your only task is to observe without grasping. Each inhale pulls you inward. Each exhale releases what doesn't belong. Some mornings the noise will scream. Some mornings it will whisper. Both are training. Silence is a forge, and every time you resist the impulse to fidget, reach for your phone, or flee into thought, you temper the blade of awareness a little sharper. Within weeks, patterns start to emerge. You see that thought is not truth, emotion is not command. Silence reminds you that the sword of mind only cuts when you stop swinging it aimlessly, the single cut. Next comes a day's discipline of action, one thing done completely. The samurai called it ichigo ichi, one encounter, one chance. To them, every act was final because every moment was unrepeatable. Choose one daily task, like training, writing, a simple routine, and perform it with total immersion. No multitasking, no interruptions, no background noise. Just full commitment. The act itself doesn't matter. Presence does. When you clean, clean as if it's your only duty. When you write, write until there's no separation between thought and movement. This is mindfulness with teeth, not soft serenity, but assertive engagement. You'll feel the familiar resistance to distraction rise, begging for novelty. Don't indulge it. Repetition is your dojo. Each completed task builds faith in execution over deliberation. The mind learns that clarity isn't found before you act. It's revealed inside action. The longer you remain with one thing, the deeper the silence becomes. There will be a moment sudden, unmistakable, when the chatter disappears and the act takes over. That's the first taste of no mind outside meditation, Mushin in motion, the empty scabbard. Every night before the mind collapses into sleep, you perform the final art, release. This is the practice of unloading the day, emptying thought that might otherwise curdle into anxiety. The samurai would polish their blades not to admire them, but to remove residue from battle. The modern man must do the same with his attention. Spend 10 minutes at the end of the day journaling, not about productivity, but about perception. Ask 3 questions. What did I notice today? Where did I hesitate? What did I carry that wasn't mine? You write not to analyze, but to witness and let go. The words are the sheath absorbing excess energy, so your mind doesn't have to. This act of reflection seals a day cleanly, leaving no loose threads to pull at your dreams. The empty scabbard is the art of stopping the inner motion, forcing closure through ritual. You close your notebook, breathe, and in that breath lies power, the strength to end each day completely before stepping into the next together. These 3 become a closed loop of mastery. Stillness births clarity, deliberate action forges momentum, reflection restores emptiness. Observe, act, release, repeat. The cycle dismantles overthinking by replacing chaos with rhythm. Every step trained presence where hesitation once ruled. It's a warrior's circle, rebuilding internal order through external consistency. At first, it feels mundane, too simple. But that's the point. Simple practices wear down complex illusions. Over time, something rewires inside you. You begin moving slower, yet achieving more. You start speaking less, but meaning more. The space between thought and action shortens until it disappears altogether. What happens isn't mystical, it's mechanical transformation. Morning silence trains awareness to witness noise without drowning. Focused action retrains attention to channel itself. Nightly reflection empties accumulated static. Each discipline cleans a layer until your natural state resembles peace, not by avoidance, but by refinement. The samurai didn't meditate to escape battle. They meditated to become unshakable within it. Emptiness wasn't resignation, it was readiness. The modern man doesn't need new hacks or gadgets to master focus. He needs a code he can bleed into until indecision starves. You don't rise to the level of motivation. You fall to the level of structure. This is your structure. Training the no-mind is not about conquering thought, but cultivating trust and silence. It's a disciplined surrender that turns awareness into instinct. The mystics called it enlightenment. The warriors called it survival. You will call it peace. Because when your life begins to move at the rhythm of your breath, still, precise, unstoppable, the noise no longer holds power over you. These 3 disciplines won't make you perfect. They'll make you pure in action. And purity, in a modern world designed for clutter, is the rarest kind of strength. But even in mastery, the samurai face their greatest enemy, not their swordsman, but their own minds returned to noise at in the year 1600. A young warrior named Miyamoto Musashi stepped onto a dusty field to face his first real duel. He arrived late, unkempt, calm. His opponent, a Polish swordsman from a prestigious school, waited brimming with rage. When the fight began, Musashi didn't rush, didn't shout. He simply watched. Then, in a single motion, he struck. One cut. Over. The other man was dead before anger could finish cresting in his chest. That was Musashi's first recorded duel, and the beginning of a life devoted not to killing others, but to killing hesitation. He went on to fight over 60 duels and never lose, yet his real battlefield was not against men, it was against himself. He later wrote, "You win battles by knowing yourself, not by knowing your enemy." For Musashi, hesitation was a true enemy, and hesitation lived in thought, fear, and ego. Musashi was no mystic recluse. He was a student of control through surrender. After years of victory, he withdrew into caves for meditation, carving his principles into wood by candlelight. He didn't chase excitement or fame. He chased mastery of perception. He trained his body to move freely and his mind to remain untouched by noise. His ultimate goal wasn't to dominate others, but to dissolve the inner opposition that clouds action. When he spoke of no mind, he meant it literally. The emptiness that allowed him to see openings clearly wasn't detachment from reality. It was absolute participation in it, unburdened by doubt. The essence of his philosophy was brutal in its simplicity. Hesitation kills. Not just on the battlefield, but in every moment of decision. Musashi believed that the second you pause to question, your energy splits, and that fracture is enough to lose everything. He trained to respond with immediacy born from faith in preparation. That didn't mean recklessness. It meant that the work of mastery happens long before the fight begins. So when the moment comes, the mind has nothing left to debate. The thinking is already done. A true strike is born from silence. You can feel this battle in today's world, though the weapons have changed. We no longer stand with swords drawn, but every man faces his own duel with hesitation. You wake in the morning intending to build something, to train, to speak, to create, and then hesitation pulls you aside. You begin to think, maybe later, maybe when I feel ready. That single thought becomes an entire war delay, and the duel is lost before it's begun. Overthinking is hesitation turned spiritual, your intellect fighting your instinct and calling it wisdom. Each delay feels reasonable until you realize it consuming your life in fragments. The modern man doesn't bleed out on the battlefield. He bleeds out in moments of indecision. Musashi's way out of this paralysis was a form of ruthless honesty. He stripped everything down to direct experience, cutting away concepts, opinions, and doubt. He trained not for victory, but to purify intention. The samurai of lesser schools obsess over the style of a strike, how it looked, how it compared. Musashi obsessed over nothing. He swung to connect. He moved to end. Nothing in his world existed beyond the present moment's demand. That's why his duels were short. There was no wasted motion, no thought wasted on image. He wrote, "In strategy, no man can afford to be uncertain." For him, hesitation was evidence of ego still clinging to outcome. To live like Mushin isn't to become violent. It's to become clean. It means to train until instinct carries you, to act until doubt evaporates, to move so precisely that failure becomes irrelevant. In his later years, when asked about success, he spoke of the mind as water, reflecting everything without resistance. That, he said, was victory. Not domination of others, but freedom from hesitation. Every modern man who suffers from overthinking can learn from him. Train your clarity before you need it, so that when the moment for action arrives, you are already moving. The duels may have ended centuries ago, but the enemy remains unchanged. Hesitation lives in every unopened message, every idea never attempted, every truth left unsaid. The difference is that today, you die slowly, invisibly, one deferred decision at a time. Mushin mastered the art of cutting decisively, externally in battle, internally in self-doubt. His life reminds you that hesitation is not caution, it's corrosion. There is only one cure for it, and it cannot be thought, it must be lived. Modern warriors don't draw swords, but they fight the same hesitation every time they open a screen. The samurai understood something that the modern world has forgotten, that peace isn't found in stillness alone, but in precision. They believed that order in movement creates order in mind. Every gesture, every breath, every act of daily life was a ritual to refine awareness until awareness became instinct. This is a heart of kata, structured repetition that frees rather than confines. To the untrained eye, kata looks mechanical, a rigid sequence of practice motions. But to the warrior, it was liberation through form. When a samurai drew his sword, the movement had already been rehearsed 1,000 times. By the 10,000th repetition, it was no longer performance. It was prayer in motion. There was no thought, only rhythm. No doubt, only flow. What looks repetitive to others is transcendence to the discipline, the sacred point where mind and body move as one. Modern minds, starved of calm, have built their temples on chaos. We multitask through meaning, chasing stimulation as if fragmentation was strength. A man today believes efficiency is a measure of power. The more he can do at once, the more valuable he must be. But the samurai would have seen this as fragmentation of spirit. Their world taught that supreme power is not the ability to do many things poorly, but to do one thing with complete presence. When you move with exactness, the mind has no room for doubt. Overthinking dies when attention has a home inside the task. In that way, form becomes meditation, clean, repeatable, unrelenting. Think of the archer standing in silence. He draws the bow not to hit the target, but to dissolve into the act of aiming. Or the calligrapher whose brush flows across parchment with such total focus that the strokes record the quality of his mind more than his technique. To them, mastery wasn't about achievement, it was about alignment. They sought not to escape life's tension, but to express equilibrium through it. That's a paradox. Repetition isn't monotony, it's conversation with truth. The more precisely you repeat a motion, the more aware you become of its hidden imperfections. Each iteration reveals a new layer of yourself. You realize the battle was never between you and the task. It was between you and your own resistance to doing it completely. In psychology, we call this flow. Athletes know it when the field seems to slow down and every movement feels inevitable. Artists call it emotion. Monks call it mindfulness. The samurai lived it as discipline embodying serenity. Flow through form means that structure, rather than limiting you, becomes a vessel through which you lose a self. It's the invisible design that gives freedom its shape. The modern man wants freedom without form, calm without constraint, but that's like wanting the stillness of a river without its banks. Without boundaries, water disperses. Without form, focus evaporates. Repetition is a bank that channels energy into depth. You only find your edge by sharpening it in the same direction every day. This is why mastery feels peaceful. You don't achieve inner silence by escaping effort, but by refining it until friction disappears. The swordsman swinging his blade, the craftsman carving wood, the musician repeating a single passage, it's all the same practice. They are learning the way of one thing. And that's the secret. When you give yourself fully to one thing, you learn the essence of everything. The mind that can be still while moving can be still anywhere. In contradiction, you find coherence. Work becomes meditation when there's no internal split, no observer judging, No future calculating, just form expressing itself perfectly. The tragedy of modern life is that we chase peace by doing nothing. We think rest is recovery when often it's avoidance. We equate stillness with absence rather than refinement. The samurai sought stillness within motion because they knew action is inevitable. It's a quality of action that determines the soul's shape. You can't stop the world's chaos, but you can make every motion within it deliberate. Wash a dish like you're wielding a sword. Write a sentence like you're carving stone. When action becomes art, thought has no place left to interfere. Eventually, the practice consumes the practitioner. You don't do the movement does you. That is the summit of Mushin, the mind so attuned to presence that it no longer distinguishes between meditation and motion, silence and strike. Discipline becomes poetry, repetition becomes liberation, and the man who once searched for calm realizes has been creating it the whole time. Peace, after all, is not hiding from noise. It's the quiet precision that makes even chaos orderly. Each deliberate act is a strike against hesitation, a carving of space and time. And when that precision becomes instinct, something miraculous happens. The mind steps aside, the body takes over, and life flows through you untouched and exact. When action and awareness become one, thought dissolves, and with it, overthinking itself. The modern battlefield doesn't smell of blood and sweat, it hums with notifications. Every ping is a call to arms, every scroll a silent duel for your attention. You wake up to a flurry of messages demanding urgency, only to realize later that none of them mattered. The new arrows are dopamine hits, the new enemies are algorithms, and the new battlefield is your mind. The average man lives in perpetual distraction, mistaking stimulation for significance. His attention, once his greatest weapon, now belongs to whoever can capture it for a second longer than the last. Every moment hijacked is a small surrender, a microscopic betrayal of clarity. Ancient warriors fought for survival. Modern men fight to stay conscious in a world designed to dull them, though it's easy to think the samurai's discipline has nothing to say here. But this war for attention is precisely where their code becomes essential again. They lived on literal battlefields, surrounded by chaos, and yet cultivated serenity. Their awareness never ended with a fight. It lingered, sharp and quiet, even after the last enemy fell. This was Zanshin, the state of remaining mind. To Western thought, focus ends when the task ends, but to the samurai, awareness never sleeps. Whether wielding a sword or tying a rope, they maintain continuous presence. Knowing danger comes a moment the mind relaxes into carelessness. Zanshin wasn't hypervigilance. It was graceful alertness, calm that persists after action. Translated into our age, it means staying awake in a world begging you to drift. Imagine bringing that same composure to your phone, your work, your relationships. Instead of reacting to every vibration, you respond only to what's worthy of your time. Instead of scrolling mindlessly, you stand like a mountain amid the storm of noise. The principle is simple but severe. Attention is respect. What you give attention to becomes your master. Every impulsive refresh, every unfiltered reaction is a bow to something beneath you. The samurai measure their honor through precision. You measure yours through focus. A distracted man cannot respect himself because he's abandoned the throne of his own mind. But the moment you reclaim that sovereignty, by deciding what deserves your energy, you recover the self-discipline that makes all strength possible. Zanshin isn't about renouncing technology. It's about wielding awareness as a sword within it. The same tools that enslave also serve, depending on who holds them. You can use your phone or your phone can use you. It's a question of who draws first. Start noticing the moment your awareness slips, the automatic reach for the screen, the aimless refresh, the half-listened conversation. Each time you catch it, breathe and return. That's training. That's the new dojo, digital, invisible, relentless. The more times you return presence to the moment, the sharper it becomes. Focus compounds like skill, and soon even chaos can't penetrate the calm you forge. Leadership, creativity, love, they all demand this continuous presence. A man without Zanshin loses momentum the second his task ends, collapsing between bursts of effort. A man with it carries composure like armor, unhurried, undistracted, untouchable. He finishes one action and flows seamlessly into the next because awareness never dropped. That's what separates masters from dabblers, not intelligence, not luck, continuity of attention. The samurai fought wars under rain and fire and remained clear-eyed. We'd allowed a few pixels to unravel us. But the principle is eternal. The sharper your presence, the quieter your fear. A mind that cannot be stolen by noise cannot be beaten by fear.at some point. All of this philosophy must leave the page and enter the pulse. Knowledge means nothing until it pierces behavior. Discipline is not belief, it is remembered through motion. Overthinking dies only when you act without waiting for permission. Every samurai understood that truth. They didn't debate their readiness, they demonstrated it. The modern man must do the same. You don't need another system, another theory to consider, another day to prepare. You need to begin calmly, precisely, without drama. If you've walked this far through these words, something in you already knows that hesitation has stolen enough of your years. The time for discussion has passed. The time for stillness has come. For the next 30 days, choose one of the samurai disciplines and perform it as though your honor depends on it, because it does. 10 minutes of morning silence, one act of total presence, or a nightly reflection that empties your mind. Repeat it as ritual, not routine. Don't chase results. Don't record progress. Just show up and cut through distraction each day with the same quiet certainty a warrior cuts through air. What you'll notice isn't loud transformation but subtle rewiring, a depth returning to your motion, a steadiness returning to your breath. Stillness doesn't announce itself. It emerges like dawn after a long night. You don't have to fight the noise, only stop feeding it. The challenge is simple. Hold your ground in presence once a day and watch your life reorganize around that calm.at the end of those 30 days. Write one sentence, your code of clarity. Let it define the man you intend to be when the storm rises. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It only needs to be true. Something like, I move without hurry. I speak with precision. I stand unmoved. Etch it into a page, or keep it carved in the silence of your mind. That single line will become the compass you return to each time noise tries to reclaim you. When confusion comes, read it. When temptation calls, recall it. The samurai prayed through ritual. You will pray through consistency. The world is deafening, but silence, practiced daily, eventually becomes unbreakable armor that there's a strength that doesn't shout, an authority that doesn't command, and it's born from a still mind. The men who mastered themselves were not superhuman. They were simply faithful to their code when everyone else abandoned theirs. The lesson is eternal. Stillness is the sharpest weapon. In noise, it cuts. In fear, it anchors. In motion, it guides. Carry it quietly. Guard it carefully. Let it hum beneath your words and echo behind your eyes. The storms of the modern world are endless, but the man who carries stillness within him carries the only victory that never fades.